And there we are live. It's Tuesday evening. As always, the Sparkle Hour is Chris and Kellyanne. And today, I'm so stoked to have you on the show today. Matthew Elmer, I think one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And when you will hear him in a minute, that's everybody will know why we call him the voice. Hello, Matthew.
Hello. Thank you so much for that. And I appreciate it. So glad to be on here with you guys.
It is so great
brilliant.
to have you today, and it's just me. I've been waiting for weeks now that you came. It's like, and it came down and went down and down and down. Actually, it was every week we had a guest, and I said, okay, next week it's Matthew, and I was so excited to have him here.
Oh man, love you, brother.
Right,
Appreciate you inviting me on. So great.
Oh, great, fantastic. So let's just run the jingle, and then we'll be right back. So here you go.
Merry Christmas!
And here we are back live.
Very nice. I loved it.
Did you like it?
Yeah. Very festive.
It took me about 4 hours to produce it.
Bless you.
But hey, good. I'm happy. I'm a geek, Matthew.
I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Having built a
He
YouTube
is.
channel, I totally get all those hours that you spend trying to make something look good. So that's great.
Yeah, and I know we still always do a Christmas clip for the business and everything. So, and I was trying to do the jingle, the normal jingle that comes at the end there, and I was trying to put just Christmas music underneath of it, and I said, nah, it's not good enough. I have to do another jingle in front of it. So here we go. I thought I'd do some sparkle actually, and I thought, here we go. We're sparkling a Christmas tree. So here we go. Some comments already. Who is the comment from? Okay, that is, oh my God, loved it. Estelle. Yeah, thank you, Estelle. Hello, Estelle. How are you? It's so great. Matthew, so tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you do so many things. And
Yeah.
but just if the viewers that are live right now and or even watch it on the replay, what do you do?
What do I do? I think at the end of the day, I'm doing my best to be a man creating better fathers in this world. And so I've got 3 boys that I love, and everything that I do in business to me is really about becoming a better man that will then help my sons be the fathers that my son the other day goes, Dad, I'm going to be a really good dad. He's like, I'm not going to tell those lame dad jokes that you tell. Right. and he said, but I'm going to be, and I said, Tyler, if that is the only accomplishment that I have in my life is that I raised 3 good fathers, then I'll have succeeded. Now I'm hoping to make some impact along the way in a business setting as well. But everything I do in business to me is about the opportunity to learn the power of creation in this world. And so I've had the experience of building up a real estate business and flipping properties. And then that led me into a education company where we had some great success. I was really blessed to grow that at a rate that was acknowledged by Inc. 5000 or in the Inc. 5000. And then from there, I started working with other individuals that wanted to create education and messaging platforms that could take maybe their following if they were on YouTube or had a podcast and help them to then serve their audiences more effectively and do that. But once again, all of it to me is about learning more about what life is about. That podcast, one of the podcasts that we worked with, was working with couples who've dealt with infidelity. So I think what I love is finding really tough issues and then finding the roots of those issues so that when people solve the problem, they don't just solve the symptoms, they actually solve the problem. I'm trying to do that as a father. I try to do that in business. And then the end result, I think, is that you get to experience a really high level of fulfillment in life when you do that. So that's maybe the quick snapshot of it all.
The great sounds up to you. And besides that, you are obviously a member of the Gogiver Alliance, and you're very much involved in the Gogiver Success Alliance. And to bring it forward, you run with David Ryan, the Clubhouse on Wednesday evening, with Ideas to Impact, which you bring out amazing guests. I'm like every week, I'm just flabbergasted by what kind of guests turn up there. And yeah, I mean, you help Bob a lot along the way to bring the message out. And I think that's when I joined the Success Alliance, you were the first person in the call reaching out to me in a private message and said, "You're welcome here. I'm really happy to have you here." And it's like, and it built somehow over the time. We got in contact more and more and more, and we had a personal call as well in between to find out about each other, which was planned probably half an hour, and we ended up an hour or something like that, chatting about something. I mean, that's why I'm not saying like you're one of my favorite people on this planet, because I can see you ooze with every breath the Go-Giver message, and that is like you always there to help other people. You really try to make a really big impact, and that's why I'm so impressed by you as a person. And going back to, I know a little bit about you as well, Matthew. You had pretty much like me a very difficult upbringing, let's put it that way, and in a religious sense of way. We both were somehow in, I don't want to both I call them cult, but you know, I'm somehow in a religion that has been very strict and had been influenced on your life, obviously. And when you started like me questioning the teachings at one stage, and I think that is when you become an adult, it's very hard, because you get indoctrinated over your entire childhood, and you get your life set that way by whatever beliefs is there. And when you start as an adult to question that, it's very difficult. And I don't know how you did it, but for me, it's still nowadays, there are still moments where I think, have I actually made the right decision here? Because there's still things where I'm like, not that I believe in the teachings anyway, in any way, shape, or form, but there are moments where this indoctrination still comes up, and you just think like, am I actually doing the right step here? Or because it's against the core belief that you have been indoctrinated. So I think that is really makes you a stronger person as well, because when you get out of it and you just go free. And when I love how you say you want to become a better father. And I know you had some struggles with your father as well on certain ways and certain things. And it's like, it amazes me how you always look out for your children. And I've met one of your sons, and who is really going, he wants to write, and I think we all encouraged him to do that, because I think he's going to be an amazing person. Because with an amazing father like this, it can turn differently, actually.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. And, you know, I've not spoke a lot openly about my Orthodox transition, but I think the truth is we're all indoctrinated in some form or fashion, yes. You know, because that's kind of the nature of, I think, our mirror neurons in our brains, is that, you know, when our mirror neurons are trying to protect us and keep us in a place that says, hey, if you're like the people around you, you're safe. And so whatever environment we grow up in, our bodies and our biological chemistry is trying to create in us a likability for those around us, potentially. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do that really effectively, and sometimes we're not so good at it, right? And so that indoctrination is sort of almost a natural state. The challenge becomes when you start to then work on identifying who you are. Now, I heard something said that it just hit me like a ton of bricks the other day. I want to credit the lady, but I don't want to distract from what we're talking about. I'm going to see if I can find the podcast, because she deserves the credit. But she said, you know, I'm never looking for my true self. Alexandra Solomon. So she's a therapist, but she says, I never would encourage someone to go look for their true self, because there's only true moments. And I think that was a distinction that I couldn't recognize with the Orthodox model that I was given, because there was this true way to be. And if you fell into that, then you would be happy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the interesting thing, is that to me, the formula for happiness, and the reason why sometimes orthodoxy can lead to what feels like a perception of happiness is when we decide who we are and we live accordingly. Well, when you're given who you are and then you live according with that, that alignment creates a level of fulfillment. The problem becomes when that orthodoxy also then starts to feed you things that you're questioning and you can't figure out how to match that up. So I would go to events like Tony Robbins and have these spiritual experiences, or experiences that really touch my soul. But then I had to reconcile them with what I was being told in the Orthodox nature that I was raised in. And so instead of being able to receive fully whatever that was, I always had to question that. Now, it's never bad to question what it is that you're given, but sometimes it delays the internalization process of making that valuable in your life. And so to me, that's one of the challenges with some of the Orthodox models out there is that they don't leave us room for exploration. And exploration is a beautiful place to come to know the truth for the moments that you're showing up in. So I think she was referring to Kelly. I think
Kelly Anderson always lovely. Oh no, it's right. It is really, and it's like, and you're absolutely right. It's like, but one of the things that I know you're one of the few people that has got my book in review process right now. And one of the things that I wrote in it, and I think it's really interesting how, when I look at obviously for the last 40 years being ADHD, and that's something we have as well common, which I didn't even know. I found out the other day. I'm obsessed since 40 years to look into how our interior brain works and how we actually do that. That's what I do today as a coach, because I have built my own strategies and ways to get out of my procrastinations and things like that. And one of the things that I always said, as much as I love Tony, NLP is not always the right. And you made a very good point on that in the beginning, where you said it's not always the right setting to work on things, because what NLP does, and the entire concept of NLP, is you overwrite these neural pathways that are built to go something. And I think in the book I talk about your fear of speaking or public speaking. So yes, I can do an NLP setting with you to take you away of that fear and you go on stage. However, what you do now, you tell your brain that you have figured out a way to pass that, do the bypass, and now your fear might be even stronger, because it actually makes backfire of you, because now the brain will do everything possible to avoid it even more and go over your new motorway that you have built. So obviously we need to look sometimes at the core issue. Where is it actually coming from? That's why I use IFS more as well in my practice, because with IFS I look, where are my protectors that are interfering in this particular moment, and why do I react like this? While, as I said, the exile sits there and just goes like, hey, I want to speak. I have something to say here. But then the protectors come in, and they can be either the manager, which does it really well, but then when the firefighters come in, they get you into alcohol addiction, or they just try to avoid even to deal with the issue that is there. And so I find it's really, really important to look into the core and the actual cause. Well, as I said, NLP is really good on certain things. Well, I think overwriting has its place. But I do always believe it is better to look at where is actually the core issue coming from. And then you can use empowering motivation, affirmation, etc., to then build on once you have resolved the core issue. And I think that's where NLP lacks sometimes, because we don't go back where it's actually coming from. We don't look and where is your actual problem coming from. So, as I said, I love Tony, but I always see the limits of NLP.
Yeah, I think we were having a conversation the other day, me and David, and I think this is a really interesting point, because sometimes we see sort of therapeutic models and then personal development models that's sort of at odds with each other. And you've got therapists that are like, those guys have no degrees, they have no qualifications, they shouldn't be teaching anybody anything because they don't do it in the right way. And then you have, on the other hand, you have personal development people who are like, I was in therapy for 20 years, it never did anything for me, and blah 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 blah. And so we have this thing where we're clashing two really powerful tools. And so I love what you're saying. I think I have received tremendous value from amazing therapists. Now, I do think there are bad therapists and there are also bad life coaches, right? So assuming you're getting good from both, and Tony is good at what he does, and it sometimes there is value in understanding the roots. If you've got a corroded root, a tree will never grow to its full identity, right? On the other hand, if you have even relatively decent roots, but you never look into the power of the future and really self-identity, allowing for a little bit of forgiveness and releasing of the past, and then you can stay in the label of what you are, the ADHD, the addict, the things. And I am not a fan of being stuck in the identity that sometimes the therapeutic model wants to put us in. So I think there's a merger between both of those that I'm hearing you bring out that I think is really powerful. That if we can identify, and I forgive me for I'm not really familiar with IFS. It's an area of study I need to put more time into. But what I'm hearing is the power of really looking at what's sabotaging us in our life, right? And a lot of times that is a root system that is creating a perpetuated sabotage. And there is an ability sometimes we've done a lot of that work, but we haven't done the next work to then self-identify in a way that's empowering with us to the world, that allows us to go, this is who I am. Now I can be boundary. Now I can say, hey, Chris, I appreciate that you want to meet at, 4:00, but that's 1:00 in the morning, my time. I can't, I love you, but I've got to work with something. I've got to create a boundary around myself rather than being a yes man to everybody. Right. So find a healing in the roots and then find an identity that becomes empowering for the future. To me, that's a really critical conversion and collaboration between those two models that I think we all have to figure out our way around.
Yeah, and you're really putting it really nice together. That's exactly what I believe. As I said, I have looked at all, and in my practice, I've used different systems, even CBT or CBC, because it's coaching, because I can't say T because I'm not doing therapist as well. IFS, I'm not an IFS therapist, I'm an IFS practitioner. Mm-hmm. But to be very honest here, I combine it all three together because as I said, first I look at the root cause, what is actually causing you, and then obviously we build with NLP and with CBT, we actually get you out of these problems and look into the future once you really understand what actually was the root cause, and to actually get them calm, the protectors, and don't get them overreact anymore. That's the point. But I think that's why I said, I think a lot of people just what I hated with therapies, when I did ADHD therapy, where I sat in a room with, and Kellyanne is in a nurse, so she will understand what I'm saying here as well. It's like I sat in a room with people that were severe depressive, schizophrenic, borderline, etc. And they were talking to me in therapy, and I was from my ADHD, and I just sat in this group session, and the only thing I had in my mind is that, what the F am I doing here? Because none of this was helping me in any way or shape or form. They were all talking about their personal problems, and God bless them, I understand they had problems. But for me as an ADHD, I was going down the spiral even more. They actually affected me. They caused me more re-triggering my trauma from childhood than anything else that it was helping. I was here trying to get my life organized, right? So I find it sometimes that, especially the psychiatry professionals, they're very narrow-minded. And as you said, and I think it's a very interesting conversation, and I love to have, I'm going to pick up on that conversation with David, because he has done IFS, so he knows what he has gone through. And this is, I think, a lot of these therapy sessions, they're not worth the money they put in there, because they're always stuck in the past. That's what therapists always go like, so what happened then? And what was then? And how do you think that could have been different? And it's like, well, if I could change the past, I would change the past, right? Yeah. Yes, we need to look. There might be cognitions in IFS where we go back in the time track and look at it and say, yeah, that is an incident that might have set triggers for the future, but then we identify the thing, but we don't get stuck on it. And I find this therapy, they really get stuck on that and on these incidents, and they really work on that too much. I think even too much. As I said, there might be really good therapists that understand they need to move forward, but most of them, they're very narrow-minded. They go down their typical therapy way.
I think that's a problem though, isn't it? Because a lot of it is to do with sort of the way that they're governed and regulated. And I know from our perspective as like the military, as far as our sort of mental health clinicians can kind of go, the extra stuff that they do is a bit of CBT and not a lot else above and beyond, if I'm honest, and we kind of, I know from our perspective, we freak out when veterans kind of transition from the service and they're obviously struggling with things like PTSD or sort of any sort of mental health disturbances, but actually the care that they do receive while they're in the military isn't the best, if I'm honest. Like for us, I'm pretty sure for all three of us in the room, we would go looking for something else and sort of apply that to our practice if it was kind of specific to an individual. Whereas I think they're really restrained as to what they can actually do, which is sad. And I know a lot of people that have kind of been through that sort of therapy. And I mean, even CBT, they will literally wait for weeks on end on waiting lists, and it won't go above and beyond that. So I find that's like such a massive shame.
There's sort of a reward, I think, that happens for a therapist in those early stages, and sometimes maybe can create a sort of confidence that, hey, this is valuable to someone, because so few people feel heard at all in this world. So few people have someone who actually listen to them, right? So when they show up in that model of, I'm going to actually listen to you, and I'm going to ask you questions that's going to shed some light that you haven't seen before. That usually creates can take a person from closed down to more openness. And so then there becomes a trust there. And so then people will go for months, years, multiple years with this person, because they're the only person they're being listened to, instead of saying, okay, how do we empower you? And this would be the question to me. I think we're identifying, it's not that any model is wrong. It's each of us have to take accountability and ownership for our own lives and say, and I have therapists I've been to, they served me, and I graduated in my mind beyond the value that they brought to me. And that was awesome. And I honor them, appreciate them. And, after I lost my wife, it was, my parents, as wonderful as they were, they did not have the ability to sit with the pain with me and hear me. My dad was not qualified at being a empathetic listener, because no one ever taught him how to do that. And so having someone that I could talk to openly about the pain that it felt to lose the person I love most in this life was highly valuable. Right now, to be a widower, to have my label be a widower for very long, did not serve me very well. To be someone, and I do share openly the story of losing my wife early on in my life, because it does, at times that creates a service to someone, but to be stuck in that, to say that's all I am is this guy who lost his wife, doesn't serve my wife today. And that was one of the journeys I had to go on, was to fully choose my wife today, and honor that love for my first wife will always be there. It doesn't have to go away. And I can fully choose to be with my wife today without some of the fears of, will she be around tomorrow? And I had a little thing happen to her the other day that just brought a lot of that back. She had a little health issue, and I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to lose another one? Like, we're quick to go back to our old patterns, right? Mm-hmm. But choosing to be in this moment where we're at and saying, how can this moment empower me for a future with the person that I care about, is I think where we have to look at. And so I would say people that are going through therapy, if there's a place where you're feeling stuck and the same thing's being repeated, it's time to graduate. It's and whether that's more therapy, a higher level therapy, a different kind of therapy, maybe you got another issue you need to look at that someone's the expert on, or maybe it's time to go into a personal development model. And I think that's one of the things that I actually have a process that I teach people. It's sort of a mind hack. And what we do is we look at the energetic frequencies that people are dealing with in their lives. So the first thing we have to do is recognize that all of our patterns are rooted in two things: repetition and heightened emotion. I call it hyper emotional experiences. So if you go back and I say, what do you remember about your childhood right now? I will bet you that you will remember 2 or 3 experiences, and they will have 2 or 3, they'll have 2 categories. They'll either be very, very positive. Maybe it was your first kiss, the first time, something happened to you that you won an award, you ran a touchdown, whatever it may be. We kicked a goal over there in England. You had this hyper emotional experiences. That's one of the memories you'll have, or the other one you'll have a really bad. Maybe you were abused in some way, said something, had something happen. And so the hyper emotional experiences, then, because we have those meaning making machines going on, as a program called Lambert calls it, you end up trying to say, what does this mean about me? And then what happens is, as we're looking at that, and I know you guys understand this, so I'm preaching to the choir here, but as we do that, then we create these sort of repetitive models that reinforce that belief so that we can shape what is an identity, so we know who we are. The problem is that shaping, when we stack it on top of something like an experience, I had an experience where my dad one time, we were trying to get a boat off of our car, our van, and it wouldn't come off. And I was like, hey, Dad, try this. And he wouldn't try it. And I said, hey, Dad, try this. It wouldn't try it. And then all of a sudden he tried it my way and it worked. And I was like, this punk 13-year-old kid, right? You in your face, Dad, and my dad, who was a really calm guy. I got the sun kind of here, but he came over and he smacked me upside the head. Now it was not he wasn't an abusive father. He reacted to something, but that was a painful moment for me for many, many years. And when I took a moment to look at that, and I was in an experience, and the question was, the encouragement was to look at that experience and go to the moment before the pain. And when I stepped into the moment before the pain, I thought about, okay, what was going on? And I realized, that for this moment forever has disconnected me from my father in a really tough way. And yet the moment before that, my dad must have had me out on the lake. He must have invested time in his son to spend time. I'd never thought about that before. And then I thought about what it was like to be my dad. And I thought about his son disrespecting him, making him feel stupid. And that his love, I realized that it was only because he loved me as deeply as he did that the energetic response became as heavy as it was. And he turned around and hit me. Now, I also saw in the moment that he hit me that he started to become a little bit like the person that he most despised, which was a man who had abused his mother. And I felt the hurt that hit caused him. And a moment that had disconnected me from my father connected me to him in a way that I'd never experienced before, and began a shift in my relationship with my father that was really, really powerful. And so I think if we can find those roots where maybe we need to see something a little bit differently, it can give us a place to now move forward with love and compassion for the humanity in others. And that's where I think this is all about. And then humanity for ourselves when we operate the same way. So I love this conversation. You guys are fun to talk to about. Not everybody's willing to talk about. So,
and that's what it is like. It's always unscripted here. It always happens it all comes out at one stage where we're going in a direction. But it's obviously having somebody like you on the stage for us is as well amazing, because I know I've heard you so many times by now, and I know what you do and how much you believe in giving value to other people. And it's just and it's as well to be vulnerable. And I think that was one of the Clubhouse sessions where we talked about being authentic and as well being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Being Yeah, now a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I have been this and that and that," and I think sometimes when you read web pages, and I say web copies of colleagues mine and what they have gone through their life, and I don't find it really authentic when I go to a webinar because they don't even talk about it. The most impactful coaches that I have met are really the people that, one, have no shame about talking what they went through, and number two, they don't use it only as a marketing gag. They actually really, you can tell they're authentic about what they're saying, and they engage other people. Because I always believe, we had like Dean, was it 2 weeks ago or last week? No, we had last week, we had Dean here. And, Dean talking about being addicted to alcohol and how he got out of it and what he does. And actually, as he said, I don't really care in my book. When I wrote it, he said, like, okay, I don't care about my book. If it only helps one person, it has served my purpose. And as you said, if I have grown 3 great dads, my life has served a purpose. And I think that is exactly the way how to look at it, because people they underestimate the value they're giving to other people. And if it's your own family, your own friends, strangers, and we're very aligned there, I think, on that point, because, and I think we all three are very aligned here, is we always look at what can we do to help others first. And because this world has become so me orientated and self-orientated that it drives me personally insane, because I can't do business like this either. I Estelle is here. I know she's watching, and I had yesterday a call with her again, and I'm working on her webpage now. And she says, "Yeah, you know what? You need to tell me how much it is." I said, "Estelle, don't be silly, right?" It's just like, I'll just do it. And it's just because I want to do it. And I really want to help her on her webpage and everything. And, and I do coaching sessions with her as well. It's not, I'm so detached from the value, therefore, what I do get in return, because I trust that I get something in return, not necessarily from her. It comes from somewhere else. She might give me a referral or whatever. And that's what it is all about. And it's like, being so detached from these things has changed my life. And I think Kellyanne read the book as well. We're all living in the same sense there. And I think it's so important nowadays to look back at the core of business and say, well, how do I actually serve the people first?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of companies have forgotten that completely. It's all bottom line by now, and I hate that. It's like, okay, money is going to come.
Yeah, I think trying to find my way in business early on, I think that was a struggle that I think a lot of us go through. I think that's why we connect so well with Bob Berg and his message. And his programs. He's got some amazing programs that sort of give people step-by-step models on how to implement. The book's great, The Gogiver. It gives you like a seed, but then there's a sort of this doubt that shows up afterwards. You're like, is this really just too good to be true and just a feel-good story, or does this really work, right? And I love how Bob's systems and processes actually like walk you through how to do that. I'm right now reading one of his books with my whole family. And it's Bob's got this sort of fascinating way to bring value to people in a broken down, like in a digestible way. Like if my 16-year-old, 15-year-old, and 11-year-old can get it and then implement it, and then come back and say, "Hey, Dad, have you noticed how me and my brothers aren't fighting as much lately?" Like, to me, that's compelling that someone has the ability to do that. And so I think there's truth. And the message deeper of what Bob's teaching us is this idea that it's both. We focus on giving, and we look for and are aware of and sense the opportunities for receptivity. We can't reject. We can't give with rejection, because that's ultimately never going to work either. But I love what you're saying also about authenticity. And what's funny is that when people show up with this, I'm an authentic person, but they're doing it inauthentically, or they're doing it for the marketing purposes, they're defying the very thing they're after. And instead of actually creating the connection that they're up to, the side of them saying, well, if I actually really am vulnerable, versus appearing vulnerable, I won't get the result. And so there's this self-talk, this self-defeating talk that is stopping them from getting to where they are. And so what I found part of the challenge here is that sometimes we teach these affirmation models. So we teach people, hey, do affirmations. And I did affirmations for a long time. I actually think affirmations do work and could work better. And I'll share with you why. So if we start with the model of what we talked about first, identifying hyper-emotional experiences, triggering our emotions so that we're ready to install a belief system, because that's where our belief systems come from. Like before, my dad hitting me, hyper-emotion, my dad doesn't love me, right? That was the belief system. And then I'd find examples of that. Later on, new emotional experience around the same experience. Now I got a new belief. My dad actually loves me more than I ever knew. And now I look for that, right? So we install we created a hyper emotional experiences, and then we can go revisit hyper emotional experiences. The birth of my son, the time I bought my first Lexus, right? And just felt like I'd accomplished something. Well, it can be fun stuff or little stuff, whatever. And if we take that hyper emotional experience, right, and then we combine it with not just affirmation, but what I call question-based affirmations, or affirmative questions. And this is rooted in the work of Noah St. John. So I want to give him credit to it. But the problem with me saying money flows to me easily and effortlessly is that the if it's not flowing or my bank account's empty, it feels inauthentic. It feels out of line with myself, right? And so I've got an integrity breach in what I'm doing. But if I take that same affirmation, the belief I want to have, which is that money flows to me easily and effortlessly, which is a common one that kind of people in that world say, and I say, how does money, or why does money keep flowing to me easily and effortlessly? Or how does money keep flowing to me? And it's like, oh, you know what? I got that insurance check for $28 the other day that I wasn't expecting. That was kind of nice, or I was something, this year I had an RV and someone wrecked my RV and I got an insurance claim for, a ton of money, and I was able to find a way to get it fixed for a little bit less than that. So I actually put a little bit extra money in my pocket. And so it's, those kind of things are like, wow, money is kind of flowing to me effortlessly, right? And then all of a sudden a client shows up out of nowhere that I wasn't expecting to get. And it's like, wow, it does show up. And that's, to me, when we start to, and this, then the brain starts going, we don't have to, there's no incongruity by stating something that we're not able to see. We have integrity with our internal being. And now it does start showing up. Now the magic the magic, which I know, your whole brand is about, does start to show up. And it puts us in a state where we now are truly starting to track things, which I have more to say on that, but I want to pause and just let you, I don't talk too much here. You're right in my wheelhouse and stuff.
No, it's great. We love it listening.
You do see it a lot though, don't you? Like, it is very much when people start teaching you around affirmations and stuff. And I've used them a lot in the past. Like, as Chris knows, I went through about 4 years of sort of anxiety and panic.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was trying to sort of rewire my brain and get out of it. But you see it all the time. And coaches are like, fake it till you make it. Just say this. And it made me laugh when you said that one about money, because I've heard that so many times. Yeah. But like you say, if you don't have that emotion and the actual integrity attached to it, it's never going to happen. So fake it till you make it really just doesn't cut it, does it?
It's something where it's this weird thing, because I taught affirmation for years and years and years. What I think it is, and the reason why it can work and why so many people do teach it, I mean, even Tony teaches it, right? Is because there's two ways that we learn. One is hyper emotion and one is repetition. So if you repeat anything long enough, even if it sits out of integrity, well, in fact, if you look at like the example Tony gives about the power of our identities, and you look at the story of the Korean War and how they took people who were going into a situation where they were POWs, loyalists. I mean, our military are the most loyal people in the world, right? Who gets up there and fights for our country more than our military? You know this, Kelly, right? To me, these are the great heroes of the world. And it's not by chance that during that time we had the greatest amount of traitors within this POW world. But what did they do? They went in and they took a POW into the room, and rather than treating them like crap or beating them up, they were nice to them. And they said, hey, do you want a sandwich? I don't know exactly what they said, but they offered him a smoke or a cook, some drink or whatever. And the guy's like, whoa, I thought these guys were going to beat me up and tear me apart. Now they're kind of being nice to me. Right. And then they said to him what? They said, well, what's going on? Like, is America perfect? Well, if someone's answering with integrity, they're like, no, America's not perfect. And they're like, yeah, I mean, do you know in communism, everybody has a job. Does everybody have a job in America? Like, well, not everybody has a job, right? And then they splice these recordings of these POWs. And then when the POW went out to the rest of their buddies, they said, well, hey, did they beat you up? No, they were nice to me. What'd you tell them? I didn't tell them anything. And then all of a sudden they start playing over the loudspeaker what this guy had said. And now all of a sudden his buddy goes, you're a freaking traitor. He's like, no, I'm not a traitor. And internally he wasn't. But repetition is so powerful that even when it's out of integrity with us, it will over time override the system. And so repetition combined with that does have impact on what our identity. And then we had the most traitors ever in U.S. history. I'm speaking to U.S. Obviously, you guys have another audience there as well. But there was traitors that took place. So what we have to recognize is our identity is everything. It is how we behave. And the two ways that we adopt that is by what we make meaning out of the hyper-emotional experiences and what we make meaning from the repetition in our life. And so if you add affirmation, you could hijack. But what if there was a more natural and integral way to do that? And that's where the questioning model allows for that. We don't have to hijack our brain. We just can naturally sort of drip in. It's kind of like something we can adopt because it's just in the essence of what we're doing. We're asking the question, why does my wife love me so much? Much better question than my wife loves me, and my wife always loves me and treats me kindly. And then what happens the next time? She's pissed off at me, right? This is not working, right? But if I'm like, man, why does my wife love me so much? Look, the other day, she made me a sandwich when I was in the middle of my workday. That was really nice. Man, she really does love me. All of a sudden the police come. And then I start seeing more things. Look how she kind of, did that for me. Look how she did that for me. And all of a sudden, look at my kids. Why are my kids such amazing leaders in this world? All of a sudden I see examples of where they're leading. And so that leads to that part. And then the last thing I believe that we do is then we need to create a massive and powerful emotional vision for our future. And when you combine these three things, you create a vision and you write it as if it already exists today. This model of implementation in your life, it transforms. It's what created for me the ability to be number 11 fastest growing company, education company in Inc. magazine, right? It's what created the ability to take a podcast from making $10,000 a year to doing over $400,000. It's what makes these processes. Yeah, there's tactics, there's strategies, there's knowledges, and all that stuff is great. But the stuff you do, Chris, in your book, and the stuff you're talking about with people, getting them to the root of what it is, and then figuring out how to have vision for the future is what will change lives. And so that's why I love you, brother, is because to me, you're speaking the same language as I am, and you've got a way of delivering it with so much energy that I think it's contagious and it's going to make a difference in this world. So.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Coming from you, oh my God, that is such a compliment. Sorry. It's just like, I look up so much to you because you're so, I say, Bob, we both agree probably on that one. Nobody can read that many books as Bob reads, but he has so much wisdom. But every time I hear you speak, or even David speak, it's just this pure fountain of wisdom here. And I really appreciate to have you as my friend, and I'm really do say that because I mean it. It's genuinely coming there because you have. You really reflect on these things, and a lot of people just say things and they ramble down whatever they say. You could have, you have been platinum member with Tony, and you could be as well rambling of the message of Tony. And as I said, I love Tony, and we both love Tony, and even Kellyanne, I know she's a very big fan of Tony. It's just they're just things where we don't ramble off his message. We question as well certain things, and I think that is very healthy as well. There are certain things I have been in events with Tony where I thought like the way how he acted to somebody, it made me cringe, and I said, "Oh, you're going here really not the right way." And I understood why he was doing it, but I didn't find it appropriate in that moment. When he did it. So, and that's an important thing as well in any self-development. You need to question. You can't just take a message and just run with it, right? Because, and as you said, there are so many bad people as well, coaches and therapists out there, where I sometimes sit there and I it's fun of me, like once or twice a week, I just go and watch one of the free webinars of somebody, right? I mean, what I see sometimes, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I hope they're not making any money, they're not having any customers, because it's really bad. They can do so much more harm as well. And it's just like, I think it's so important that we take whatever we do very serious and we reflect on it, and we can only speak about experience. And like, even it's advice, we're giving advice, but it shouldn't be actually advice. We're just saying our viewpoint on things and just open the conversation. That's what we're having here right now, having an open conversation on these matters, and everybody should have their own viewpoint on it. Kellyanne, what do you think?
In what sense? How do you mean? As in having an open conversation about how you put your views out in the world? I think a lot of it you know yourselves, is about experience, isn't it? And we all have very different experiences and different things to bring to this. I've spent almost 20 years in the military. It's a very, very different sort of place to sort of when you look at what you do, Chris, with the executive coaching, like the military is a weird world. We literally do indoctrinate people. Like, my mum has always put it this way, and it sounds terrible, but she said when me and my brother both joined the army, they removed our brain and replaced it with a brick, because we were literally just taught to say yes to everything. So like you say, over the years, I've learned to question it, then I commissioned, and I just think, all three of us sitting here have so many different experiences, but actually it's still relatable in some ways, but we do all bring different things to the party. Like even saying about Tony, again, he's just a guy at the end of the day, and he's just using the experience that he has to do the best that he can for other people. So I just think, we can all just do our best, really, and just not judge, I guess. That's my little opinion.
I love that, Kelly. And, it's interesting. I think it was Jocko or one of the guys that maybe it was one of the military guys that's got books or podcasts out there. And recently it was interesting. He said, people think that the military is all just a bunch of robots. And in some ways, I think that is actually true. I think you can try to deny that, but in some ways there's a lot of people that fall. But I almost feel like sometimes these things are sort of the test, and to let the cream rise to the top, to let those that are willing to, and it's clear that, becoming a major like that, it's almost this test to see who is going to question this and see the alternative, who is going to push against the pricks a little bit and be comfortable with the discomfort in what's, in the way we're trying to tell you to be. I went through a personal development program, and it was interesting to me. They had a really powerful way in which they sort of invited you to invite other people to their program. And it was all of a sudden this really powerful aha and I don't know that this is true. Maybe I'm just delusional and I want to see the best in these people. But it was this thing where I was like, wait, the real breakthrough is when I break free from feeling like I have to do what they tell me. And they gave me all this great insights to my life, and that was cool. And then that gave them sort of influence, because influence can never be taken. It can only be granted. That's the great work of Milton Erickson. When I read his book, I saw he does all these weird things with people. And I'm like, wow, how does he get anybody to do any of this stuff? This is nuts. Like, and then Tony, you go to a Tony event and he has you swing your arm around and pick your nose right in front of everybody. And you're like, what in the heck?
Yay!
Why am I doing this? Right. And you realize that at the end of the day, influence, and this was my challenge with my relationships. A lot of times is I was like, how do I influence this person? How influence cannot be taken. It can only be granted. And so if we step back instead, how do I create the space for people to trust me enough to grant me influence in their life where I could serve them fully? Who do I need to be to give them that? That's what I love about Bob. That's who Bob is. Bob Berg is an essence of that. He's learned how to be the space that allows others to connect with themselves, and then do exactly what you said, Kelly, or Estelle. I think maybe it was Estelle that said in the comment, and help us to realize that the answers, there's flags and there's signposts and there's sort of clues in all this great work out there with people's books. And I read 2 to 3 books a month usually, and have for about 15 years now. And so I love digesting, but one of the great breakthroughs in the last about 3 years was like, Matt, stop freaking looking for the answer out there. Spend more time. So if you're going to read, great, but also spend time in meditation and self-reflection, because otherwise you're never going to be present enough. You're going to be so stuck in growth. And Colette mentioned this on one of our clubhouses. You're so stuck in growth that you're never present to what's going on. You're always trying to fix everything and make everything better, so much so that you never actually sense where things really are. And so whatever solutions you are bringing to the table, you're missing the mark on the real solution that needs to happen. So I think that it's clear that, Kelly, probably the reason why you became successful in the military was not because of the replacement of your brain, but that you chose, right? You chose to say, and what else is there, right? And brought your own essence to that, which then it's so funny. We see this as kids, right? Everybody's trying to be unique by doing the same thing everybody else is doing, right? And when we sit in our own real uniqueness, which is why I freaking love you, Chris. Like, you own your uniqueness as well. I am learning from you and hope to continue to learn from you in that ability. And you own your uniqueness better than almost anybody I've ever met. And in a beautiful way that's not this overtness. Look how unique I am, right? It's this is who I am. I freaking sparkle. Right? Now that's not a word I would use, but that if you meet Chris for 2 minutes, you're like, that's freaking Chris. Like, that is his word. And he does sparkle. And I go, man, what's my word? Like, what is Matt's word? I don't know yet. Maybe I need to spend some more time with you, Chris, and figure that out, right? Which is why I think you're so good at helping executives really come to know themselves, so that then they can show up in the world, and they really can, they can show up with authenticity. They can go, hey, you know what? That we can be direct, and we can be specific in our direction of others in a way, because we're not coming from a place of, I'm still trying to find myself. I'm still trying to read more books that'll tell me who I am. We're coming from a place of, okay, that doesn't resonate for me. Is that about me, or is that about you? How do we go from here? That becomes a really powerful place where we can know people, we can see their value, we can resonate in that value with them, and we can serve them while also creating results in our own lives and our own businesses.
Yeah, what a beautiful message there. And that's the truth, because God, it's like, some of my clients where I go, like, they're just empty shells sometimes. I mean, they're brilliant CEOs, they're geniuses. I mean, seriously, when you talk to them, their brain is amazing. But then when you ask them what they really are, who they really are, there's like this complete emptiness, because they haven't even looked at themselves or inside themselves for the last 20, 30 years in their career. They were very focused on where to go, the growth, and that Colette made a really good point on that one. They're so stuck on the bottom line and what they're doing. They don't know who they are themselves, and nor can they actually, because as they don't know who they are themselves, they can't even take in other people. They can't even take other personalities in, because they just so focused on one thing. They don't see around them. They just have this tunnel vision. And I talked about it last time with Dean, where I said, with one of the executives, I said, well, now he was telling me his day, and the first thing he said to me, he said, my employees hate me. I said, why is that? And he said, well, they don't talk to me. Everybody, when I walk into the office, everybody looks at me strangely. And basically, then he was walking me through that. He comes in, they have like a Starbucks or whatever, Costa thing there or downstairs. His coffee's already done, because they know when the limousine drives run, they make his coffee. He doesn't even pay for it. He just goes past the line, picks it up. They just basically put it on account, and he goes up in his office. And I said, okay, fine. So I challenged him, and I told him, I said, well, now the next week, do that. You're going to stand in line with everybody, and you're going to have 3 genuine questions you ask your employees that you're in line with. And I don't want anything to ask about the business. I want to find out something about them. If they have horses, where they've been with the children, I don't care. And do that for a week, and then sit down at the table and have a coffee with them. And he did. And then it's funny, because the next week he was like, oh my God, you don't even believe, everybody's talking so good about me, and it's really funny, and it's like they really like me, and now they're coming to my office and they're having a chat, and at lunch I sit with employees and I said, simple, no? It's not really complicated. And he's actually a really cheerful person, but he hasn't seen himself like this for the longest time. Until you take them out of them, I'm just like, and I'm very direct. I would shake them. I said, listen, no, it's time to wake up here. But it's so funny because, the self-work and the mindfulness work, you have to do with yourself. And I think that is always the starting point for anything you do. If you don't know who you are yourself, and if you don't know your own authenticity, how are you going to lead somebody? You can't. It's just like you can maybe do the tactics and the strategies, but that is not genuine leadership. Leadership is when you look at yourself, and we had this conversation on Clubhouse the other day, where you got me I was still typing, rewriting my book, and you got me really, and I was really startled in the first minute. I was like, okay, so what do you want me to say right now? But then I got into it because I was so focused. I listened to the conversation, and then you called me out, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? But then when I talked about it, it's like you have to be intentional. You have to be authentic to yourself. And for what I said on that evening, I hope you remember where I said, and you have to set as well boundaries, because a lot of times we forget about setting boundaries as well, how they influence us and everything. And a corporation, a board of directors can be very influential, and they can sometimes go over your boundaries, very much over your boundaries, because they expect certain things. But you need to set your boundaries. He said, don't lose yourself. I did that. I did that myself in my corporate times when I was in the C-suites, where I lost myself. I lost my voice. I lost everything. I was just rumbling down the corporate message. And that led to burnout, because I didn't feel right anymore. I didn't feel myself anymore. I was just doing it for the corporation. That's what they expected me to do. And I made myself this promise, and that's why you say sparkle. I made this promise to myself, never, ever, 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 ever again, I will be not authentic to myself. And that's it. And that's how it is. And I'm very direct as well if I don't like somebody. But I tell them in a nice way, but I'm direct. And I say, seriously, this is not going to work out here. I have refused clients where I said, sorry, it's not going to work. And I have somebody else I can send you to. I think you're better aligned with this person, but you need to be authentic to yourself. But you can only do that when you know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, it's not going to work, is it?
Well, I think that's such a great example of how you help not just you sparkle your magic, but you help someone else sparkle in their magic, right? In this example you gave of Dean and how he had this magic in him. Yeah. He didn't see it. And so sometimes we need that direct, and I love that you brought up the conversation of boundaries, because boundaries, I think, is a real misconceived topic in the world today. In a world where we're talking about, this, we kind of mess up some things. I feel like when we start using these words like inclusive and divisive, and we tend to think that there's sort of this thing going on where we're all divided, we're all disconnected, and so what we need is some sort of way to language things that includes everybody. But we're all different. We're all very different, and so it's yes. We need to be inclusive, but what actually is more inclusive is not as much some language pattern. There's room for some language pattern. But that's the surface. What's inclusive is I'm a human doing the best I can, and you're a human doing the best you can. And I've done the work to figure out who I am and who I'm not, what I'm comfortable with. One of the great mistakes that a lot of us entrepreneurs make, that I made early on, is I didn't have any parameters or boundaries in my business. And so, all of a sudden I found myself speaking 3 nights a week, doing 3-day events twice a month. I had no time, and my top priority was my kids, and I had no time to do that. And I was doing $3.7 million a year in a business. That's great. But I'm not living my full expression of myself. Now, don't get me wrong, man. I love speaking in front of people. You get 400 people in an audience, shouting and yelling, just having fun, and you're learning stuff. And that's great. That's amazing. but I had allowed myself to sacrifice what it is that mattered. And it was like an either or. I either had to do all this work or I had to focus on my family. I couldn't do both. And when I sat back and said, no, what if it's what if I can do both and figure out what my parameters are? I can build a business that actually can function at a high level. And I don't have to say yes to night events multiple times a week. And I don't have to say yes to weekends all the time where I'm missing my kids' football games and whatnot. What if I can do both? What I could have the business I want and have that. What would that look like? What am I comfortable with once a quarter, 3-day weekends? Maybe I am comfortable with that. Maybe that's okay. So it's not that it's none of the other thing, but it's like, what are those? Really take some time to define what are the parameters of that ideal life you want to live. And then now that you've got those parameters, those boundaries, now you can present to the world who you are. And it's not just things like logistics, but it's also things interpersonally, right? What are things that really matter to you about how you budget and manage the budgets in your business, and how much you invest towards the growth of the company, how much you invest towards the marketing in the company. Let's figure out these identities so that as we're now working together collaboratively, we put ourselves in a situation where we know who we are. And when we know who we are, we can be in better relation. Boundaries are not about disconnection. They're about connection. They're about, I know who I am and I can now deliver that to you, and you can tell me who you are, and now we can interact with each other effectively. And boundaries allow us to interact healthfully and happily together. So anyways, that's my little, so I'm glad you brought that up about boundaries. I think people
love it.
And we are at the top of the hour. We have completed our thing. Matthew, I want you to stay online when we go offline. We're going to go just be afterwards in the green room for a second. It was such an honor, and we have to bring you back. Actually, like there's so much more to talk about, I'm sure, and we're going to certainly do that. Thank you very much for being our guest. If you're watching right now or in the replay, we wish you certainly, I'm sure Kellyanne does as well, a Merry Christmas to everyone. And well, we're going to be there before the New Year, so I'm not going to say Happy New Year because that's going to be the next one. But we wish you definitely a Merry Christmas wherever you are and watching this today. Thank you very much, Matthew, for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Amazing.
And happy holidays.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.